is 22 minutes after 8 o'clock, and guess what? We lucked out a few minutes here early. Congresswoman Yvette Herrell got free and was able to join us a minute or two early here on the phone. Good morning, Congresswoman. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoy our conversation so much.
I do too. So I'm glad we got an extra minute or two here. I know they got you on a busy schedule on Friday here. With everything going on, I'm just kind of curious. Of course, the attention right now this week is on the Senate side of things, looking at the Supreme Court justice nomination. When that's going on, what's the House doing?
The House is actually in recess.
Okay.
So I've been in district all week.
Okay.
I was over in Las Cruces yesterday. I've been up in Ruidoso, so I've been visiting people all over the district this week. So it's funny because we'll be in recess and then they'll be having those confirmation hearings and so forth, and that's turning into something. I do appreciate the fact that it's not been the circus that it was with, say, Brett Kavanaugh, but some of the questions are a bit alarming, and I do think she's a very bright and very accomplished judge, for sure, Ms. Jackson. But I did find it, and I'm sure a bunch of people did, pretty fascinating that when Marsha Blackburn asked her to, describe a woman or what's the definition of woman, and she wouldn't do it. And I think what really the more important thing to keep in mind, and probably most of the listeners or the people who saw it were thinking this, is, we're moving to this place where we're supposed to just accept. If a grown man says he's a woman, he wants to be a woman, we're just supposed to somehow accept that. Yeah. And I think most people just don't feel that way. And so I think that answer from Ms. Jackson was very telling.
Yeah, I think, Congresswoman, you were mentioning about, some of the questions alarming and things. And you're right. And you're right, because that question about, what's your definition of woman, and I think what people got upset is we all know that answer. She gave the political answer, not what the answer is, and I think that's what got people upset. But I think what bothers me with the whole thing is while people are going online and saying how they're upset at the senators for asking her these questions and great. I understand that those questions are like, what the heck? Why are you answering? But at the same time, these kinds of questions of equal, and not the same question, but the equal stupidness was also asked for the last couple of judicial hearings here.
Right.
Why weren't those same people complaining then? They were cheering months ago. Now they're complaining, and that's where I was like, if you didn't like it then and you like it now, then there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? That's the part that makes me mad.
It makes me mad too, because it's just the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
It is absolute hypocrisy, and who pays for it in the form of these failed policies and the attack on our domestic oil production. All these things we're seeing are us. Are the American people, and I think the reason this is so important is, this is a lifetime appointment. I mean, this woman, if she is in fact confirmed to the Supreme Court, you have to think about, these are the people that are going to interpret and shape the law, the way the Constitution reads. I mean, this is a huge deal, and it really will have implications over the course of time. And this is important that we understand this, and also, packing the court. Even Justice Ginsburg said, 9 justices was enough. But of course, there are others that think there should be a larger number, and obviously that's due so that they can put more progressive judges on the bench. And then it will, in fact, change the way we look at our Constitution and the way law is interpreted. So very fascinating, very scary to think that we're in a place in our nation where we're having the kind of conversations that are actually taking place instead of building our nation up to a stronger place, working on our economy, working on small business development, working on bringing manufacturing of goods and pharmaceuticals and drugs back to our country. I mean, our president is asking our OPEC and others to drill oil when we're sitting here enriched and blessed with such an amazing natural resource. It is making no sense, and I think that certainly the people of New Mexico, but the people of the country are starting to go, wait a minute, this is crazy. And I think there's people far right, far left, but I believe the synergy and the understanding of what's happening is really taking place, more in the middle. And it doesn't matter your party affiliation, your race. People are just starting to go, this isn't right. We're going down the wrong road.
You mentioned that very thing, and you're talking about oil and gas production there. And I just saw on the news last night, in the 5 o'clock news, they were Senator Martin Heinrich. I guess he introduced some legislation in the Senate where in essence, he's basically standing out saying that America needs to not rely on Russian oil, petroleum. And so something where we don't accept or whatever, and I don't remember all the details of the bill he's proposing, but along those lines, that's what he's trying to do. And I'm sitting there listening to the story, and I'm like, you are a senator for the state of New Mexico. Rather than telling us stop using Russian oil, which, yes, you're right, but offer the solution and say New Mexico's got you covered. Let's fire up our, you know what I mean? You're a representative of New Mexico. Represent New Mexicans and look out for us. Yes, I agree. We don't want to be on Russian oil, but guess what? We don't need to buy it from Saudi Arabia either. Let's buy it from New Mexico and Texas and our places,
Exactly. I mean, you represent one of the number 2 producing oil state in the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, the jobs that are directly and indirectly attached to that, the communities, the schools, the budget, all these things. And I'm telling you, it is absolutely an attack on our fossil fuels to go totally green. Well, one, we're not there yet. I think most people would agree that, look, an all of the above approach is a great idea, but we have to be sensible about it, and there's no way we can eliminate all fossil fuels and think that we are going to live in a normal setting the way we are used to living now with the goods that we use every single day. I mean, what's the backup plan for plastic bags or medical equipment or syringes or makeup or clothes or sports equipment or asphalt or I'm just looking around where I am right now thinking if everything in here that was touched by fossil fuel left, it'd probably just be the concrete slab, and the walls. I mean, they're not being honest with the American people about how many products we use every day that are touched by petroleum products and, the medications. I mean, so what makes me mad is, it's all green, let's do green, save the world, the environment. Of course, there's no regulations. We're asking countries that have no environmental regulations, or certainly not the kind we have, to pump more oil. So it's kind of like, well, how are you trying to save the planet, save the climate, save the world, when you're going to ask people that countries that produce oil in a dirty fashion, it's dirty oil, they don't do it like we do. So how is that saving the planet? This is why that's the conversation that needs to take place. And I've asked some of these environmentalists in committee, you're hamstringing the American energy production. You're making it harder, not better, for us to do things. So how are how's China responding? How's Iran responding to you? How's Saudi Arabia? Well, and it's like, well, you're right, because there is no response because you don't have that authority. And so it is absolutely an attack on American energy, and that's what we need to be honest about.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And Martin Heinrich, none of our delegation has been standing and beating the drum to support our industry except me. I mean, Fernandez has come out with bills to raise royalty rates. They're all about Green New Deal. It is fascinating that we would have people in Congress that would not understand the value of, one, American energy independence and what the products and services are we use every day. And I think he's also helping to push, all LNG, like gas stoves and, all these other things. Well, guess what? Not everybody can afford that, just like everybody can't afford an electric car either.
Sure, yeah. That was kind of the funny memes going around week before when everyone was like, oh, well, you can't afford the $4 gallon gas? Buy a Tesla. Yeah, because I can afford a $60,000 or $100,000 electric car. But,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
that's how out of touch they feel. Yeah.
Exactly, and here's the conversation that ought to be happening. Let's continue to push our energy producers to do it like they are cleaner. Let's give them the tools they need. Let's help them build out the infrastructure with the pipelines and the things that we know are necessary, and stop hamstringing them. But here's the thing, and I want to kind of touch on this because I had mentioned it once before in our office. I don't think we've talked about it. There are now little surveys going around, and I know they are in the oil patch for those companies because I've seen them, where they're having these subcontractors, if you will, fill out surveys that they have to disclose what kind of impact their company has on the climate. And if they don't fill it out, or if they don't if they don't cut the mustard with the federal government, the feds are considering taking them off a list or putting them on a list where they could no longer be used as a subcontractor.
Wow.
This is an absolute attack on American free markets and capitalism. And just last week, the SEC, or actually earlier this week, the SEC put out a report, an article that said publicly traded companies, they are going to start having them fill out these same type of questionnaires to see how their companies, their products impact the climate. This is scary stuff. This is things that you don't hear about this on the news. This is an absolute overreach and intrusion of our own government. I mean, there are problems around the world, and we see them, and we see it on the news. But the real fight is happening. It's almost like a silent enemy that you cannot see because it'll show up in the form of a questionnaire, of an overregulation. Look at the banks. They're very now becoming so woke, some of them, that they don't even want to do business with some of the industry that are important to New Mexico. That's the thing that Americans need to wake up to, and we need to do, and I will do a better job of speaking about these things, because that is absolute sabotaging our capitalist markets, our free markets, and really our businesses, and that scares me.
Yeah, when we're listening and hearing you talk and talking about some of the mandates and things that are going on here in these regulations, it almost reminds me a little of the 50s and 60s, the McCarthyism era type, the blacklist. That I feel like we're almost in a more modern version of that right now. Am I off at all, you think, at least from your perspective?
No, I think that we need to be very careful and very watchful. I mean, I just heard this week that company, that Blackstone, that company, that they're buying up real estate by the tens of thousands, because ultimately they may be owning the property that they will allow people to rent. I mean, there is a much darker, uglier movement happening within our own nation. And of course, it's hard to keep up with it because, honestly, there's so much going on in terms of globally, just with what's happening in Ukraine, with what's happening with our border, with what's happening in energy. And by the way, we still have Americans left in Afghanistan that this administration does not talk about. But I mean, there's so many things that are happening that you really, unless you're hearing it from somebody or in an environment, a business or somewhere where you're seeing it, it's not something the general public are talking about. But I am telling you that you are not far off, I don't think, and we have allowed now the value of our dollar to be devalued. And I think, we're running down the road where they're going to have to really increase interest rates. I mean, we've done this 3 times, kind of that reset many, many years ago. Then they did it again in the 70s. And that's when they raised those interest rates to around 18 or 20%. And we're on the verge of, because we aren't smart in the way we're governing our nation, we are overspending when there's no offsets. Now we're tripling the ability to have people make money where they can pay taxes and so forth. And the idea, I guess, the solution for this administration is just to spend more money with no guardrails, with no way of knowing where and how this money is getting spent. And now we're finding out, we spent over $10 trillion last year, and so much of that money has been used for waste, fraud, and abuse. Not COVID. I don't think a golf course, and I don't think sport complex, and all these things that are being spent by our money, our taxpayer dollars, had a thing to do with COVID. And I can point to a half a dozen small communities in the 2nd Congressional that would have welcomed just a few $100,000 to help with essential services that they were really having a hard time with, or food banks for some of the seniors in their area when the senior centers were closed. I mean, it just makes you sit back and go, at first you think, is our government really this bad?
Mm-hmm.
And then you wonder, is our government really for America? Because it sure doesn't look like it at this point. And you're starting to see and think the way a lot of other people are, and it's scary to think that way. And it's scary to even say it out loud, but there is so much darkness going on to sabotage our small businesses, especially, and it's just scary to me.
Yeah, and we talk about mandates and regulations, and I'm thinking, yeah, we need less of that. But one area I think we need more is the spending side, and that's all right. What if we put the same kind of mandate and scrutiny on the monies and what it's earmarked for versus where it actually goes? And I got a feeling if you started mandate and regulate and do some digging on those, you're going to find a whole lot of places where we could save money and get rid of cutting pork and then actually taking that money and doing the programs and the things that it should be for and where it's for. Exactly. I think if we want to talk mandates and regulations, let's start mandating and regulating what happens after the check is signed, not before.
Exactly, and make the lawmaker accountable. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, and I've said this before. The only thing to me, I say this kind of smiling with my, smiling about it, but you feel like the only thing these founders missed with our Constitution was putting in term limits. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is the poster child of why we need these term limits.
I agree.
And it is, I think that has been somewhat of a major problem for our nation, and I think we need them on the state level as well. Because now, when you're looking at the big picture, mm-hmm. we've got people, and I know we are short on time, but I want to say a couple of things.
Yeah.
We now have the environmentalists and the special interest groups calling the shots. That's who's dictating to Nancy Pelosi and all these others. But here's the other thing that, and this is to me the most remarkable thought to have. Here we have a lot of members of Congress, not all, but there's a lot, especially on the Democratic side, who have never been in business for themselves, never signed the front of the paycheck, and the President of the United States has never been in private sector business. He's always been in public office. Yep. So every time that you sound the alarm, well, heck, there's the federal government to bail us out. Senator and then vice president and president. I mean, 40 years of public service of just using the government mm-hmm. as your bank, as your scapegoat, as your everything. These people have no idea the cost of doing business, what it feels like to lay awake at night to make payroll, and not only for that employee, but how that impacts their families and, just the general costs in general of doing business. And these are the people that are pointing to all of us. I mean, you're going to do this, you're going to pay that, you're going to pay this for insurance. Oh, and by the way, we're going to now put these environmental regulations on you, and you have to sell. I mean, this is sabotaging what we stand for and what makes America so great. And we have people that do not understand that, and I think in some cases don't even love our country. Why are we going to change it to a country like Venezuela or Cuba? It just baffles it in my mind.
And how much of it's being done not because they think that's what's best for the country, but that's because it'll cover up the shenanigans they've been doing for the last 30, 40 years and saving their legacy, so to speak. How much of that's going on? And it's like, I don't know what my kids and how much generational wealth I've milked out of this system, and now I'm supporting my kids and everybody else on, even though it's something I shouldn't have done or didn't deserve or earn,
Right. Or how much of it is being done because special interest groups and these big corporations are in the back pocket of these politicians. So we're cutting off the little guy at their knees, making it tougher for people, small businesses that can't absorb these sort of costs. But, it should be a little bit alarming when SEC puts out this report that they're going to start mandating this environmental, basically, survey, and then they put in there, Google, and some of these companies, they volunteered to do it. Well, heck yeah, because you're protecting them, because they're canceling our culture, because they're part of the problem, not the solution. And these crazy politicians and this administration are just happy to trot down that trail because they are following the money. And who's getting the short end of the stick every day is the American taxpayer, the American business owner, the American worker. That's who's getting the short end of the stick with this stuff.
Yeah. It's 8:41. I'm going to get in trouble with Casey if I don't
I know it. Yeah. We'll probably catch you in a minute. So, well, I will. It's my fault, too, because I just love being on the radio with you. But I won't keep you either.
Yeah, but I appreciate the short visit, and we're gonna make Casey give us more time. Make you come in studio and sit down, and we'll have all kinds of time, and they won't be able to shut us up. So
let's do it. Let's do it. I'll tell him that we agreed on that. I'll tell him that's our plan.
There we go. Perfect.
Anyway, well, you have a blessed weekend, and I just thank you so much for the opportunity to visit with you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll talk to you next time. And we're praying for you. Take care.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Congresswoman Yvette Herrell.